Welcome back to the pregame show here live right before we take on Park University in the AMC Game of the Week, joined by Coach Ira Stickson. I'm Brad Seigan, in for Harry Schrader this week. Coach, a little bit of a downgrade in your interview this week. I'm sorry, but we're going to try to get through this. With your game this week, you've got Park, a team that you went up, played in Parkville last, I believe it was in December. It was a little bit of a different type of game. Got down a little bit early, came back to the second half, and wasn't quite able to maintain the offensive pressure in the second. What did you guys leave on the table that you really want to concentrate on getting back for this game?
Well, you know, we had a lot of turnovers in that game. We got off to a slow start. Park is a hard place to play, and you know, when you get down and having to fight your way back, it's tough. You know, and you know, when you incorporate turnovers with that, you know, missed easy buckets, you know, fouls and things like that, it could make the difference in the ball game.
That was a game that was certainly a winnable game, and you haven't had a lot of those types of games lately that you look at it and say, if you see the matchup on paper, well, this is a game we should win. The last, when you went through that 5-game losing streak, 4 of those games were against teams in the top 25. You're past that stretch. How does that impact you and your team going forward in terms of how you're preparing and your expectations?
Well, we prepare, you know, for each team as if they are a top 25 team. You know, we can't, you know, let up. We can't go lightly by any means, you know, because those teams are fighting just as well, you know, to get to the conference tournament. So we prepare as if we playing, you know, a Freed Hardman or, you know, a Lyon College. And, you know, most of the things that we look to work on is to focus on our defense without fouling and taking care of the ball.
Overall, yeah. Over the last game, I should say, Central Baptist was a really great game for you guys. You went down, tough place to play, and really executed on several different levels. We saw a lot of great highlights in that game. What stood out to you in that game as really being the key to having so much success?
I think it was our effort. Coming off the Lyon game, I was extremely proud of the girls and how we played against Lyon on that Thursday night. The effort was there. You know, we competed with them for 3 quarters. Had some mishaps here and there, and you know, they're a good team and they got the best of us. But going into Saturday's game against CBC, we brought that same intensity. And that was needed, you know, coming off a loss to Lyon College, coming in CBC, to make it a good trip for us overall in terms of, like I said, the effort for the girls. Really, really proud that, you know, like I said, we maintained that intensity and energy and focus to be able to get that win against CBC.
When you look at that game against CBC, you look at the box score, anyone who saw the game, the first thing you think of is the impressive performance from Jessica Moore. She had 27 points in that game. Of course, you knew that she had that capability. Did you expect to see that type of performance from her that game?
You know, sometimes you just never know what to expect sometimes, but I was definitely thrilled that she stepped up. You know, she was in a zone and she was hitting her shots, and you know, other people stepped up as well, but I think it was just maybe a light bulb went off and that, you know, hey, it's time for me to produce, and she did. And we're, you know, again, like you said, I knew what she was capable of, and now the goal is if we can get that consistently.
You know, she's the type of player that we've started to see some increased output from. Game by game, she's starting to get better and better. She comes off the bench and plays 31 minutes in that game, finishes with 27 or 29, depending on who you talk to. But that was a game that could just be a breakout game for her. What does that mean going into this week? A player like that, coming off a breakout game, how do you take that game and put that into your overall strategy for this week?
Well, she, you know, like her coming off the bench, you know, bringing that energy, you know, with the game she's coming off of, again, those expectations are going to be that, you know, she's consistent with it. Now, I'm not saying that she has to go out there and score 27 points, but again, coming out and making an impact. You know, hopefully we'll have everybody back that we need to have back for this game, and that's going to be important. And everyone is going to have to make a contribution. And again, looking at her performance in CBC, I really expect nothing less than her coming out to giving it her all, which she does. It's just a matter of, like I said, contributing from a point standpoint, from a defensive standpoint.
When you guys had that road trip and you're looking ahead at the coming weeks, when you've got a long road trip to really end the season, what do you do with all that downtime? You were in Arkansas for what seemed like a week or so. You were only there for about 72 hours, but what do you do with all that downtime?
For the girls, they like to sleep. For the coaches, we're constantly preparing for the next game. We're looking at the personnel. We're looking at our next opponent. We're looking at the matchup in terms of what we need to do, what we did in the last game. So we're constantly focusing on, and not to mention throw a little bit of recruiting in there. So from that standpoint, but we try to keep the girls engaged in doing things. But we also know that it would have been a long road trip, a long season, that they need their rest. And but like I said, we try to keep them engaged, as much as possible, but also giving them a little bit downtime just to be away from basketball.
Looking a little ahead, Saturday is your final home game of the year, and you've got 6 games left on the year, so your final 4 are going to be on the road. That's a tough stretch with how the conference schedule laid out. What are you looking at as being kind of the key to getting through that stretch?
I think staying healthy, maintaining our health, maintaining our conditioning. You throw in that being on the road. Of course, that takes us away from the classroom. So focusing on academics while we are on the road, but also putting into lost my train of thought. Putting into the point that this is our last 4 games, and we are looking for them to give us everything that they have for these last 4 games. Now, what happens after that will determine how things pan out in the conference, in terms of getting to the conference tournament, things like that. But for those last four games, everything is expected out of them for those games, and then they can rest.
You have not only a tough stretch for those games, but you've got to be starting to look at the conference standings a little bit more every day. Have not necessarily solidified a position at 7th, but you haven't moved out of 7th for a while, and everything up above is about 3 or 4 games difference. So that's probably a good position for you right now. I know you don't want to drop into 8th. What are you looking at through the conference through the last 4 weeks as being really impactful to what happens with Missouri Baptist?
Well, if we could win these last 6 games, that would really be awesome, It's doable, yeah. But looking realistically at it, I think, taking care of the games that we know that we can take care of, competing those games that we know that are tough, and, definitely don't want to fall down to that 8th spot, but we definitely don't want to lose any games that we shouldn't lose. And, looking at that, looking at the conference and where we're sitting, every game is important. And tomorrow's matchup with Park, that's definitely going to be an important game for us. And then we got Williams Baptist, who we beat early on in the year. That's going to be an important game for us. So two very important games, and then for us in terms of where we finish in the conference.
Final question, Coach. Senior Day, Saturday, chance to honor your seniors. You've been with these girls for a long time. I know that's kind of a bittersweet day. Talk about your overall thoughts on this Senior Day.
It's tough when you get individuals in here as a freshman and to see them finish and actually graduate and get a degree. I mean, that's great. It hasn't been about, always about the basketball, the X's and O's and things like that, but ultimately seeing these ladies go into young women and really to get that degree, walk across that stage and get their diploma and then move on into their career path. So it's going to be, bittersweet, like I said, especially those that came in as freshmen and now are seniors and will be graduating with their degree.
Coach, good luck this week.
Thanks.
That's Coach Iris Dixon. We'll be back right after this. Kevin Paulus and Harry Schrader will have the call for you. Missouri Baptist and Park taking on the AMC Game of the Week right after this on the Spartan Digital Network.